everyone, welcome to the channel, welcome back to the channel of City Gal Country Roots. And today, I'm finally putting some stuff in the ground. So I'm going to walk you guys through how to get some of your early starters in the ground that you need to direct sow. Direct sow just means that you're putting them right in the ground, you're not starting them in seed trays or anything like that. Some plants prefer it. So just a couple things about what I have so far. So, my husband got me an actual tiller this year. It was only like 20 or 30 bucks. It's really helpful. Before I was using like a little pitchfork to do everything by hand, and it took forever and it made my back hurt. So this is awesome. I'm also going to be using just your basic rake you can kind of get from anywhere to rake out the bed, make sure everything's even. I got my bag of black cow manure and compost. You can use any kind of compost that you want. Honestly, I prefer to go and pick some up from a local farm. However, I just didn't have the time to do that today, especially with the quarantine and everything that's going on. I also have just like a broken wooden stake, and what I've done is I've actually marked off like 1 through 12 inches, just so that way I can use it as a measure. I also have a tape measure, a Sharpie, all of my seeds that I'm going to be planting, as well as just some labels. I don't leave the labels in for a long time. They actually kind of wash off with the rain and everything. But just when I first plant everything, I put the labels in. And once it starts growing, you'll know what's coming up. And then the other thing that I have is my garden notebook and my garden binder and plan. So if you want to know more about keeping records, drawing a garden plan, go ahead and check the videos up that are linked at the top. So let's go ahead and get these beds started. Alright, so I had black plastic on here for a little over a week, just to try and kill some of the weeds and stuff that had taken over, and to also get any of those weed seeds that were in there to germinate, just so that way I could see them now, I could rake them and get them out of the bed. If you have, like, I have a ton of leaves and like hay and different stuff in here. If you don't have like a lot of weeds, like actually near this bottom part, I don't have too many weeds in here. I can actually just pull those out by hand. I can actually just pop all of this stuff right inside my composter. It's a really good dry material, especially if you've been adding like a lot of potential fruits and vegetables and that kind of stuff, which is the greens. Your compost also needs some browns. So I like being able to just go ahead, try not to put a whole bunch of dirt in there, because then you got to replace it. But just go ahead and get some of that stuff up and in your compost. I got this compost bin a couple years ago online for really cheap. I think it was maximum $40 or $50, and you can get them from any of like your like Home Depot, Lowe's, Tractor Supply. A lot of those places will also have them. There's also a lot of great stuff online for like building your own. I just got the black plastic one that was already made because we have dogs and cats and other things that come by here, and so I didn't necessarily want it to attract critters. And you don't have to get like all of the debris out. Some of the leaves and stuff, again, it's compostable material. It just makes it a little easier for you to have, the bed empty so you can really see where you're putting things. Again, I'm going through any of the weeds that have already sprouted. I'm taking them out and just tossing them in the walkway. That way they can dry out and go away. Weeding for me is going to be kind of a pain in the butt. Probably for the next couple years, because I let the gardens go for a little bit while I was doing other things. And so now the weeds and grass and stuff have kind of given themselves permission to be here. So I definitely recommend staying on top of the weeding, especially now that I'm actually putting in compost and planting things in the soil. I just want to keep an eye on the weeds. And that's another reason that you actually want to mark where you're planting stuff at first, where your rows are, so that way if anything falls outside of the rows, you know that it's a weed, pull it up. Because weeds grow much faster than most other plants that you're going to want to eat, and they will take over and take all the nutrients from the soil and starve out your plants. Just so you guys know, the dimensions of my bed, so it's 12 feet by 3 feet. I'm pretty tall, so I have some pretty long arms, so I can get back to the back pretty easily, or even lean here and get to the back. You want to make sure that it's something that you can easily reach across, only because you don't necessarily want to be standing in there and compacting your soil down. If you have kids and you want something for them to like get around into, I recommend doing something like this but small, maybe like a 3x4 or even like a 3x3, something real small that you can put in a different spot in the yard, and it can be like their little garden bed, and you want to kind of put that someplace where they can get around all sides of it, or 3 out of the 4 sides. So the soil is actually pretty moist, which is really nice. You want to make sure that when you're going to be putting seeds in, the soil is actually already kind of wet. Water is what's going to help the germination process a little bit here. So you want to make sure that you're doing that if it's not already wet. Right. Looks like I got most of the weeds out here from tilling and raking and all that other stuff. I'll grab a couple more out. Again, since I pulled most of the weeds out already, I'm just going to take some of this and toss it over in my compost with some ground material. Alright, so we definitely have some stuff sticking out of the ground here. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good, and you'll be able to pull some of this up and move some of the things around kind of as you go. Okay, so after I've got that kind of cleared out, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my bags of compost. So I use Black Cow. Again, it's not real expensive, about $5 a bag, and I can get it at Home Depot. And the bag is small enough that I can pick it up and move it all around by myself. If you have the option to go and get like cow manure, horse manure, any of that stuff that's been aged for a while, that's the best thing that you can do. With that though, you want to make sure that it's been sitting out for like 6 months to a year. Like it takes a long time for it to become compost and not just crap, essentially. So you want to make sure that you do that. And also that stuff is definitely a little bit smellier, so some people are really bothered by it. So you might want to get it, put it in, give it a couple days, and then do your plants that way. So I like to put kind of a bag at the one side, a bag in the middle, and a bag at the end. I always get 4 bags per bag. I normally only use 3, but I like to have an extra one just in case. And I'm actually going to be building for my chickens. I'll do a video about that I'll link. I'm actually going to be doing a grazing box for them to put inside. So I figured having an extra bag of the manure wouldn't be a bad idea, just so I have something to put in there. Alright, so after I put everything out, I like to rake it kind of even, and then to get the real big chunks out, I used to do that by hand, but now that I have the tiller, I can actually use that tool. And it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be, you know, amazing. You just want to try and get a good layer over everything so that way every bar of soil is getting some kind of amendment. In years past, when I have like a lot of compost and everything and we're keeping up on all of that, I'll get a good amount of compost out of here. So hopefully by the time I'm doing like the summer planting in May-ish, beginning of June. Hopefully I'll be able to use a lot of that compost in my other bed and I won't have to buy as many bags. And then I'm just kind of gonna till it up a little bit here. I also call this waking up the soil. It's really good to till and to do this because it helps aerate your soil as well. Plants can't grow if it's compacted, especially if you're going to be putting in any root vegetables like we are today, like carrots or anything like that. They can do it, but they just have to work a lot harder. So these are about, I'd say, maybe about 6 inches, 5 to 6 inches. So it's a good depth down. And before I put this up on top and put the plastic on top the other day, I actually went through and did it as well. So the soil should be nice and loose. And you're not going to get all of the, all of the chunks broken up with the tiller. But as you're going through, you can also break it up with your hands a little bit. Ooh, got a root of something in there. See, tiller's also good for that. You find stuff that's creeping up in there. So we're going to leave this right here so I can get my garden shears when we're done and cut that up. And realistically, this is probably a root from one of the trees that's sneaking down here. Alright. If you want to be really, really anal, like I'm about to be, you can rake it again to make it a little more even. You don't have to do that. But I just like to start with an even surface, or as even as I can. Actually gave me a little bit of hope about what was going on. Was even though I hadn't worked in the gardens for a while, I had a lot of worms that were in here when I was going through, and that made me really happy to see because I was worried about the soil health. And if you see a lot of worms and you still have some like good, rich, dark soil, then even if you haven't been doing it, your soil is pretty good. Alright guys, so we're going to go ahead and get started planting. One thing I wanted to start off by showing you, since we're starting with our bush beans, is that any kind of green bean that you're going to plant, you want to make sure that you're planting it with what they call the eye down. The eye is like this little teeny mark that's on the green bean, and it has to go down into the soil. So that's just something I kind of learned the hard way. If it's not facing down, your green beans are not going to do what they need to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So I have my garden plant stuck in the front of my binder because it's dirty, right? When you're watering and you're doing things, you don't want your garden plant to get all destroyed because then you can't save it. So I have that there. Also, you'll notice I have my seeds all sitting off to the side on one of the dried off black cow manure bags. Because everything's kind of wet from the rain, you don't want your seeds in the bags, pouches to get wet, because if they get wet, that can trigger them to start to germinate and grow, and you don't want to lose a whole bag of seeds to that. So just be really careful not to get them wet when they're in there. So I'm going to my garden plan, I'm looking, and remember, if you watch the video on how to draw a garden plan, which will be linked at the top, you'll notice that every box is about 6 inches, okay? So in case you forget, you can also look at the back of your seed packs, and that'll tell you, final spacing and everything like that. So we're going to plant our bush beans between 4 and 6 inches, and these have to go really deep. So they need to go about 1 inch down, okay? So what I like to do is I use my handy dandy little stick here, and I just go through and I make little trenches for where I want my things to go. Okay? For me, it's easier to make a little trench than it is to make a hole. And then on here, I told you I marked off my little thing so I can see what's about 4 to 6 inches. I'm going to do these 2 rows of bush beans about 6 inches apart. So I'm going to make my 2 rows. Okay. Now, my beds are 3 feet across, so if I'm doing it, every about 4 inches or so, I'm going to get about 3 beans per foot, so I'm going to get about about nine beans per row. Yes, I did just use my fingers to count, folks. I teach English, not math. All right. So again, when I'm planting these, I'm going to make sure I have the eye that's facing down. If you're new to like measuring stuff out, you can definitely use this just to make sure that you're going that 4 inches. Okay. I've been planting for a while, so I'm pretty good about eyeballing the measurements most of the time. But I still like to have my measuring tape and what I like to call my measuring stake with me, just so that way I can be, precise if I want to be. We're just going to go ahead and get all these guys down in here. Again, eye down. They need to be about 1 inch. The reason that I plant bush beans as opposed to pole beans, even though I love pole beans too, bush beans are exactly that. They grow about yay tall and they bush out. And so I like them for like smaller spaces. I'll probably do some pole beans as well. But for right now, we're just going to stick with the bush beans. I'm also not doing a ton of bush beans. I'm only doing 2 rows just to get a little bit of a crop coming. I really want to learn how to can green beans this summer, and so I know that I'm definitely going to need more than just these 2 rows. But I might be building a new bed or something like that, so we will see how that part goes. And then I never plant anything right on top of, like right here, unless it's like marigolds or something that I'm doing as like a perimeter to help keep other pests away. Most of the time, I try to give at least a couple inches of space on either side. Yes, I could plant something right up here, but I want to try and give things room to grow. If I was, crunched on space or something like that, then I would definitely get as much bang for my buck as possible, but we're not hurting for space. Again, I'm just gonna write bush beans, and I'm really picky because I actually I'm going to put one for literally every row. If you don't want to buy these, that's okay. You can use popsicle sticks. You can get those from like the dollar store. If you're buying your own plants and you're not starting anything from seeds, they always come with those little, labels in them. So I have a ton of those that I save too. These just happen to be something that I got years ago when I first started and was trying to make everything picture perfect before I realized that is not how nature works. But I had them, so I'm using them. And then I also have tape, so you want to make sure that you are taping your little seed bags back when you're done. Otherwise, they go everywhere. It's happened to me many a times. And if you have like 5 different varieties of bush beans or something, or the real tiny seeds like for herbs, you have no idea what those are. So you're either going to just toss them out and see how it goes, or you're going to have to throw them away. So once I got everything kind of in here, again, green beans need to be about 1 inch down. They need to be really covered up well. So that's why I dug trenches that were a little bit deeper. And I'm going to like add extra soil onto the top of these. And I'm not patting down real hard or anything. I'm also, as I'm going, if I see anything that's like green, I'm taking it out of here because I know right now that it's a weed. And I don't want it to stay.